Hey everyone, welcome back to When Creatives Thrive, a BOPA podcast. I'm Stuart Rustin, the multimedia manager at BOPA. This episode, in celebration of Black History Month, I'm joined by Mark A. West Jr., a Baltimore-born visual artist, curator, and historian. He's also a current resident artist at the Bromo Seltzer Arts Tower in downtown Baltimore. We discuss how history, which Mark studied primarily through art museums, influences his current approach to art making, including how he portrays Black subjects and his frequent depiction of deities. We finish with an exploration of Mark's social media handle, House of Mark West, and how the physical structure of a house has become a part of his personal brand and a metaphor for fostering community in the arts. Trigger warning, this episode contains discussion that include references to rape within the context of race and art. These conversations aim to explore complex and sometimes painful histories, as well as their impact on artistic expression and cultural narratives. We acknowledge that this content may be distressing for some listeners, and we encourage you to engage with the episode in a way that makes you feel safe. Listener discretion is advised. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you, Stuart, for having me here.
Of course,
I'm excited
of course.
to be on the podcast.
Hey, well, yeah, you're supporting us at an early stage, so I really appreciate that. So first I wanted to start with how you ended up at Bromo. Give us a little sense of your history and how you got there.
So I after graduating college, I moved to New York City and I started pursuing art. And after 3 or 4 years, I managed to save enough money and I bought a property in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I always wanted to have a place where I could go and escape and be in nature and be able to separate from the stress of being in the city. And it was during Christmas time and I wanted to come and visit my grandmother. I'm from Baltimore. So I had booked a flight, came over, and I ended up overstaying my limit in Brazil. So they kicked me out for a whole year. So I had to think about what I was going to do, and I started making art in my grandmother's basement, and I outgrew that space. And during one of the art walks, or it might have been on a Saturday, I walked into the Bromo Arts Tower, and I just, I went up and down the tower. And eventually I ended up getting a studio there. I liked that it was downtown and that it was by the train station and the light rail, and it was by all the art spaces. So it just seemed really fitting. There's also something I wanted to mention too. They have the Bromo Art Walk. So if you're not connected to any of the art institutions, if you have a studio there in the Bromo Arts Tower, you can be a part of their art walks. There are so many people that come through all the different art spaces, and they normally start at the Bromo Arts Tower. It might be 100 people or even 200 people or maybe more during the art walk. And also on Saturday, the buildings are open, so you can go and visit all the different art studio spaces. So again, if you're just starting off and you want to introduce yourself, it's a great way to introduce yourself to the community.
Yeah, we actually met each other at something similar, but the open studio tours, and Bromo was one of the featured spots. I learned so much about you and was sort of a fly on the wall for a bit, because you were talking to somebody else already. I think it's super interesting that you have taken on the role of historian specifically. I mean, I know you're an artist, you're a curator, and also a writer. But history, take me through your thought process. Why is history so important, and why do you continue to feature it in your work?
History is important to me, especially as an artist, because art, if made with intention, has the ability to capture a moment in time. And if enough time passes and the work is relevant enough to enough people, that work will in future generations now become an historical artifact. If it's relevant to society, if it accurately portrays what's going on, that's something that future generations could be looking at and studying and getting a glimpse into the past. If we're intentional about the stuff that we make, it's something that can provide education. That's the goal for me. I studied history in college. That's my background. I learned nothing but stories for my college experience. And I studied in Paris. I studied in the Louvre Museum. And when they taught us about the past, they used the art in the museum. That's how we learned. Or if you look in the pyramids, it's filled with work that's made by artists. The drawings that are on the cave walls, the sculptures of the pharaohs, they're talking about being remembered. What they mean is that they needed an artist to draw them so that 1,000 years later, you could dig them up and see who they were. That was the whole purpose of making it to the afterworld. It was so and it worked. They needed artists and sculptors and painters to do those things so that 2,000 years later, it can become history. And I think that they were very intentional about that at that time.
And do you feel a certain responsibility now? Because a lot of your work includes depictions of Black bodies. Do you feel like you have a certain role in capturing either the present day experience of a Black person or also reflecting upon the experience of Black culture throughout time?
There's the idea that most of the mainstream art is made of white people and is made by white people. This is partly true, partly false. I prefer there to be more Black art for this reason. But that's not really why I think I paint Black art. It's because as an artist, I want to be honest. So I can't paint Swedish people. I don't know them. I've never been to Sweden. You want me to do this? I can't do it. It would be false. I can paint people from my community, people that I've seen. I can paint things that I know, things that I've seen my entire life. And even down to the nose and the lips of Black people, I know how to do that because I looked at that my whole life. You want me to paint a white person's nose? That's a different story. That's not my culture. There are certain things that I'm going to do because I've seen it my entire life. So I think that the artist needs to be honest with what their life experience is and that they have a duty to portray that. There's also something in academia with historians and this whole idea of white people going all around the world and telling everyone's story. They're going to China and writing the book. They're going all throughout the countries in Africa and writing the book. They're telling everybody else's culture instead of looking at their own. And there's no desire to tell their own story. They always want to tell something that's exotic. And I was always turned off by this. And that's all they feed you when you study history is stories by people who've not lived that experience, and they sound ignorant. When you look at what they're writing, you can tell that person didn't live what they're writing about.
It's interesting that you say that too, because when your focus is external and you are attracted to, like you said, something that feels exotic to you or feels sort of edgier, and that's why you're drawn to it, you're sort of ignoring whatever's happening, in your backyard. I think that that's maybe an American generalization as well. Americans, I think that Western culture.
It's bigger than just white people. It's Western as a whole. I don't want to put everything on white people because even me, as someone who travels all over the world, I could be guilty of that. We just have to be conscious, extremely conscious. And when you're telling your own story, you can be less conscious and more authentic. If I'm talking about Baltimore, I don't have to think about what I'm talking about. But if I'm going to another culture and trying to tell that story, or I'm painting something that I'm not familiar about, now I got to make sure that I take all the considerations in it because I don't fully understand it.
Can you tell us about the style, but maybe also in some ways like sort of the strategy behind portraying Black bodies as a single shade of black?
Mm-hmm. It's a jet black. We call it jet black.
It's a jet black.
Mm-hmm.
There is not, I'm looking at your work, there are no browns really. I mean, what's the thought process behind that approach?
So I paint them with jet black There are many reasons, and the reasons and the clarity of why I do it has evolved over time as I've worked more into it, as I've learned more, as I've increased my history level, and saw more work and just been exposed to that. And when I first started painting the black people, it was reminiscent of blackface, and my my sense as a historian, I had felt that the image that I had made was powerful, and that there was more to the story than what white people had told us about the blackface. I felt intuitively that there was more to that, and I questioned immediately why, as a person who identifies as the color black, I should have hatred towards people painted as black. That raised flags. And as I look more into the history, I had saw people were painted jet black as far as 3000 BC. The history of painting jet black goes back to the pyramids, and you can find it in artwork all over Africa, from many different periods of time, and specifically in ancient Egypt, when they painted black people, the people who were jet black with the red lips and bright eyes, they represented people that were from black Africa. Yellow people represented Asians. White people represented the Greeks and the Romans. So the colors at that time, it meant someone that was from the black part of Africa. But in the Europe, in the greater Nigeria region, Central Africa, the Orishas were painted as jet black. And in Brazil and many different Latin American countries, when you go in the spiritual shops, you will see the deities painted as jet black. And these are images that people are praying to. So in my culture, where we're taught to hate that image, globally, people are seeing it and they're not seeing the same thing. They don't have the same history. They're looking up to these images. So I had learned that there was a responsibility with me by painting this, because it's now part of a body of work. So there's a duty to respect it. And I choose to mostly paint the saints and the deities and people who have done great things. And for me, that black color, black is now meant to be the absence of slave blood. These images are not diluted with any other color. So the people in my images, they were never raped. They were never raped. They were directly from Africa. These are the original man people, okay? They come from the original person that existed when the earth was created. And they are directly descendant from that. There's no other culture that went, and they were not enslaved. So I have to paint them liberated, because they don't have that. They don't have that runs through their veins. They're not light skinned. They're not high yellow. They're not mixed with anything else.
That's incredible. I love hearing that, because in a sense, it takes the power back, right? Like, you may have viewed a black-faced image and you may have felt some form of shame, or I'm not sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you get to sort of have that jet black color back. You get to look at it through a different lens. And to me, I think it makes it more of a gift to you as opposed to
yes, it's a gift that you have access to, that you didn't know that you had access to,
right.
But that the outside of the United States, the rest of the world is accessing it. Kind of like African clothing. Black Americans, we don't want to wear the African clothing because we don't know which country we're from. You put on that clothing and you wear it proudly. That's where you come from. Every black person comes from Africa. It's not much debate on that, So wear the African clothing proudly. That's something that you can claim. Mm. We claim braids. Mm-hmm. What else do we claim? Claim the African clothing. Claim the history. Claim the African religions, claim everything, because those are things that were taken from us, and we have to regain, and we have to relearn, and have to culture ourselves. We have to culture ourselves.
Your Instagram handle is House of Mark West.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about the house? House is a structure. House is an idea. Like, why are you drawn toward and call yourself online the House of Mark West?
So when I first started my brand, I always felt like it was something bigger. I felt like I was bigger than just a painter. And I felt that I was going to contribute more to the world artistically than just making paintings. And that there was always this duty to make a space for the community. And I think of a house as a building with many different rooms and many different things going on. It's not just one room. And that's something that I want to offer.
You were telling me before we started recording about an experience where you offered your work to a gallery.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah. So when I was in New York City, I started off selling my work at the 14th Street Union Square Art Market. And I sold it for maybe 6 months. I had sold some paintings and was able to get my first studio, and was going to open a small studio gallery for myself. And I had 2 different solo exhibitions, and no one came. The first one, no one came. Second one, five people came, my friends. And then I had this idea that, the space is big enough. What if I invite some of my colleagues to also show their work? And we had the first exhibition with about 10 different artists, and over 100 people came. And I sold some of my work, and some of my colleagues also sold their work. So I learned that if I use this space, and I'm just a little intentional about my place and my role in this environment, my community can benefit, and I can also benefit. This is something that both people can benefit from. If you use your blessing to help other people, God can help make that blessing bigger. So when I was trying to tell everyone to come to just see my show, people didn't come. But when it was with 10 different artists, and they were now a part of something, that is what made it so much larger, and is what made it able to grow and help me get my name out there, and also help some of my colleagues along the way.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with all the things that you're doing. Not only do I love the work that you're doing, but I love that there's so much thought and intention behind it. Tell us where we can find you. Obviously, we can find you at the Bromo Seltzer Arts Tower on Saturdays or any other day that you're, in the studio. But yeah, where can people find you? Where can people find you online?
People can find me on Instagram, House of Mark West. They can look at my website, markanthonywest.com. My studio's also in the Bromo Arts Tower. And I normally curate exhibitions in the DMV area, and at my art space in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. If you're ever in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, we may have an exhibition up, and you can view some of the works there.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Stuart, for having me. It's been a pleasure, and yes, thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Thanks again to Mark for joining us. And remember, if you have a story to share and you're interested in creative conversations, fostering community in the arts, reach out to me at srustin@promotioninarts.org to join in on the podcast. And remember, when creatives thrive, we all rise.